I'm driving to work this morning and I'm facing a very challenging day. I'm anticipating some significant challenges, specifically around feedback I have to give my peers. Have to because I feel like it's my obligation. In our work center, we provide non-technical professional development. Things like leadership and management, communication. And I love the opportunity, but the space, generally speaking, across not just in our company, but in this space, organizational development, training, learning, all those spaces, can get very redundant and sometimes low bar, meaning the standards and the backing for the material provided may not be very high. A lot of times that is good because people that we work with need basic foundational training. I come from a military background where we were provided leadership in pressure situations and professional development, personal development. We were provided that early and often. Sometimes formal, sometimes informal, but it's built into the system. And not everybody gets that. And I acknowledge. So the idea of providing very foundational things for people who often seem very experienced is very necessary. The problem, though, is I come from a psychology education background, and in addition to that, work in a healthcare environment. Both are very science-backed, but sometimes also can stray from that science-backed information. What's the foundation of what you're teaching people? What is the basis of the fact and the research? And it can be very frustrating, number one, because I see the problem, number two, because people don't necessarily always agree with me because they don't come from my experience. And this is no way minimizing the experience that other people come from, because I work with a lot of people who have great experience. But I also work with several people who come from a background that provides a unique experience. The main issue that I run into is, where's the scientific backing here? What are you basing this off of? When we talk about professional development, a lot of times it leans into psychology, because we're talking about the way people act, the way people think, the way people believe, the way people behave in an environment where other people are thinking, believing, acting in a way that might be contrary to, or might provide conflict, or it might be complementary, but they just don't realize how those things work together. And so that's what we do. We teach people how to be more self-aware, how to better self-regulate, how to communicate more effectively, how to have outcome-based goals, but also focus on the process. Like, those are all the things that we do. Sometimes the term that I like to use, pop psychology, starts rolling in, and we get really heavy personality-based rather than skill-based. We get really stuck on these theories and these models rather than the strategy of how they're actually implemented and why they're actually relevant to what we're trying to do. And for me, coming from a different background, not a better background, but a different background, I like bringing my expertise into the conversation because I like my expertise. I think it's very valuable. And I like taking other people's ideas into consideration, which can lead to problems with feedback. If I believe, in this instance, I believe a workshop, that a personal development training session that I sat through yesterday as a dry run before we release it to the general employee population. The dry run didn't go very well. Not because the facilitators and the leaders of this workshop weren't good. They're good at what they do. They speak well, they communicate well, they present well. The material was not up to our standard of what I believe is appropriate for the content that we put out, the training that we put out. It's not science-backed. It's very pop psychology. It's very personality-dependent rather than skill-based learning and application. So now I find myself after the evening of thinking it through, talking it through with my wife, sleeping on it, so I'm not reacting emotionally. I want to present logical information, feedback in a way that shows that I care. I don't think I'm better than them. I'm just providing my expertise and want to maintain a standard of quality in our organization, which is tough because it's not like we produce a product, a physical product, right? A physical widget. And we're like, hey, can we test it, right? What's the durability? What's the longevity? Are people buying it? We're selling and training on ideas, and that can be very difficult in the space that we're in, because some people might view this, especially people who are not educated and trained and experienced in what we do, meaning adult education, learning and development, learning models, strategy models, application of these things. You look at this from the outside in, and you might think, oh, well, that's really super helpful. I can identify with that, especially when we talk about personality-dependent things. Oh, I identify with that personality style. Well, that's not the point. We're not trying to fit people into a box. We're trying to train people on skills, which is what I have a massive problem with a lot of training models that use personality-dependent styles, where you're like, oh, I'm the rabbit, you're the otter, or whatever letters they assign to those things to help you identify, are you extroverted, are you introverted, are you sensing, or do you work on intuition, like those kind of things. Like, I don't care. I don't care what your personality is. I care what skills I can teach you. And yes, there is benefit to understanding yourself better, but not because we put you into a box. It's because we want to teach you how to perform better based on your environment. So if I give you a 4-box personality assessment and I say, hey, which one do you fit into? And you're like, well, I see myself fit into 3 of them. Is that beneficial to you? I don't think so. So it's kind of turned into a little bit of a rant on training. But now I'm not coming to somebody with data that says, hey, you're producing a car that breaks down 20% of the time. I can't do that. I don't have that data. Even if I waited, their feedback from users might be, oh my God, 5 out of 5 stars. I learned so much. But are you really? An inexperienced person that's learning from you, who thinks they're learning, but what they're learning actually isn't beneficial to what they're trying to accomplish, that's not beneficial. And so now it's my responsibility to go in and provide feedback to a peer about something where it's essentially my opinion versus their opinion. What is that opinion based off of? If I don't necessarily have hard data that's going to prove my opinion, like I would if I was in manufacturing or production of a physical product. This could easily be applied to relationships. It could be applied to somebody, how they're living their life. You know somebody who is living in a certain way and you're like, I don't really think, like, you say you want this, but then you go do these things. You know, how do you give people feedback on where you don't necessarily have the data? You have an opinion based on your experience and your education, but your education and experience is actually different than the other person. So there's not even really a level playing field for you to compare opinions. This is the day that I'm anticipating. And I'm trying not to let it get to me, right? Because I don't want to come into this thing anxious, because then I seem unsure of myself. I don't want to come in frustrated, because then I'm going to come off as too harsh, maybe seem like a know-it-all. I'm just talking about from my perspective. But how do you do that? How do you... Damn, I look left for 1 second. Everybody hits their brakes on the interstate. How do you... I promise I'm paying attention, not looking at the camera. what does that look like for you? How do you give feedback to people that you like, that you care about, and you want them to do better, and you don't believe the standards are up to your expectations, the team's expectations, your family's expectations, your business expectations? Because it's one thing to just come in and say, wow, that wasn't really good. Okay, well, but what are you basing that off of? And even if you come in thinking that you are right, or even if it's not about being right, it's about you think that your thoughts and beliefs are valid, how do you give that to somebody who might have different thoughts and beliefs that are contrary to yours? And it's difficult, and that's where a lot of times in relationships and family, friends, coworkers, we have these gray areas that can potentially lead to conflict, because from a certain perspective, if I really thought that what I was doing was, I was super hot for this topic and I built this workshop and oh my gosh, I think it's great and the feedback that I'm getting is amazing, and somebody comes to me and says, yeah, I think we need to cut that class. I don't think it was really well done. You're a good facilitator, but the content itself, it might be difficult to not take that personal. To be like, oh, I feel like I'm being attacked. I created this thing, so therefore I don't, you're attacking me. And that's not the point. The point is to address the quality. First, address behaviors. Well, the behaviors were good, right? They had, it wasn't a personal thing. They presented well, they facilitated well, they communicated well, but the content itself wasn't quality. So yeah, this is the day that I'm facing. I'm driving into work right now, and I'm gonna do a walk-in with my boss, close the door, and say, hey, because he was in the class too. Like, hey, what did you think about that? And I know what he's going to do. He's going to look back at me and say, well, what did you think about it? And then I'm going to have to say, I don't think it was up to our standards. I don't think that class should be released to the general employee population. I don't think it was quality. And it's not even a matter of what do we do to adapt it, to save it. The whole premise of the workshop was non-effective. And so this is the feedback I'm going to have to give. I'm going to have to figure out how to communicate effectively, stand by what I say, because I'll listen to people, and it's up to my boss to decide. I'm going to give my opinion, and whatever my boss decides, my boss is going to decide, and I'm going to have to go with it, because that's his job. His job is to manage the work center. I give my feedback based off my professional education, my professional experience, my professional opinion, and I do it professionally. I do it with empathy, so people know that I'm not attacking them. But I can't sit by and allow this to happen, because I believe it will show reduced standards of our expectations. Now the next question is, I can't hold people accountable to standards I haven't set. So have we set the standard? It's a question that my wife asked me. Okay, well, are you disagreeing on something that is stated or unstated? That's another problem. So that's an issue of, if you're addressing something in your family, meaning whether it be your immediate family, your spouse and your kids, or it be your extended family, have you had the conversation so you know when people are stepping outside of standards? Guys, this could be, do you go to a bar when you're away from your spouse? Are you flirting? Are you looking? How far do you progress that? Are you talking? Are you chasing? Even if there's no intention of actually doing anything, are you getting numbers? Are you talking to people? Or are you just going and hanging out with your friends? If your spouse or significant other was looking at you from across the bar or the restaurant and they saw you behaving, would they be upset based on what you're doing? What standards have you set for yourself? That, what does it mean to be a good husband? What does it mean to be a good dad? What are the behaviors necessary to exhibit that, so that other people, not just your spouse, but your friends, know you're stepping outside your bounds? My friends know when we go out and about, if I start acting a certain way, they know because I've told them. They have a very clear understanding of my standards for myself in my marriage as a father. It's adapted over time. because I've understood I have to deliberately create the standards, then I have to go out and deliberately decide what the behaviors are that reflect the standard. Then I have to communicate that so people understand my standard and the behaviors associated with the standard. It's the same thing that I just did with the rugby team for their preseason camp of trying to get people to buy into culture. Well, have we defined the culture? Well, let's define the culture. What are the pillars? What are the standards? What are the above the line, below the line behaviors that either reflect what we're no longer allowed to do or things that we have to do to remain on this team? If I want to remain part of the team, I have to do these things. If I want to remain on the team, I no longer get to do these things. Whether you're talking about a sports team, a work center in a business, a marriage, a family, these are the things that you hold people accountable to. And if you can't define what it means to uphold the standard because you haven't set the standard and there's too many gray areas, it's opportunity for conflict. And if there's opportunity for conflict, conflict is going to find its way in. I'm not saying that you have to go all Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory and write a relationship agreement, but maybe in your head, what does it look like? That's actually not a bad idea. You don't have to go crazy like he did. What does it mean? What standards are you holding? Because if there are no standards, I'm driving into work trying to think of, based on what I'm thinking and feeling, what am I going to talk about? Have we actually talked about the standards? And I remember having a conversation, and I don't know if it registered with everybody. One of the things I talked about, coming from a psychology background with a master's degree, meaning I've done a lot of research, we work in a healthcare organization that is very science-backed. We need to make sure that we're holding ourselves to a standard, and part of that standard, I believe, needs to everything that we do needs to have a research-backed, science-backed approach to it, because otherwise we're just pulling shit out of the air. At some point, somebody's going to be like, bullshit, that's garbage. And if I have research back, I can say, no, you can disagree with it, but here's the research that I based it off of. Here's the sleep study. Here's the leadership study. Here's the psychology of the amygdala, the psychology of the vagus nerve. Like, I can pull those things out from the resilience workshops that I've built, and the other one that I'm building, I'm rewriting this burnout, because burnout is a clinical term. We shouldn't be touching it. So I'm turning it into more of like energy management. Like, how do you manage your energy so that you can, so that you don't lean into that clinical side? Everything that I'm doing is science-based on resilience and energy, psychology and physiology and all these things. I have the research. So if somebody challenges me, I can say, oh, I appreciate your feedback. This is where I got that from. Let's talk about it. That's where a solid professional development, that's a solid professional development approach. But if we don't have that, if I don't have that in my work center, if you don't have that in your relationship, if you don't have that in your family, I'm not saying you have to go research everything, but have an idea of why you have the standards that you have. What behaviors are you allowed? What behaviors are you not allowed? So you can decide in your relationship, in your life, in your work, what is acceptable and what is no longer acceptable. What is the minimum expectation, and what's not the ceiling, but what's the upward reflection of really outstanding work or a really outstanding relationship? So that even if I have a really good relationship, even if you have a good relationship, even if you really enjoy your work, how do you know that it's really exceeding your expectations? And wow, this is awesome, and something you can reflect on and be grateful for. And then you have the other days where you have, bad days or substandard, or whether it be you or somebody else, that you can call yourself out, you can call your peers out, but you do it in a way that has something to back it up. It's not just, hey, my opinion is this. You're not always going to have the black and white answer, but if you don't have anything to compare it to, when you call people out, it is going to be on opinion alone. So what are you basing your standards on? And I got a couple minutes out from work, so I got to shut this down and try to figure out how I'm going to have this conversation and what I'm going to base it off of, because I'm really super frustrated. I really don't want to accept mediocre. I don't want to accept subpar quality, and even if it's not something that I brought, I don't believe that this reflects the professionalism of our work center and is not going to be beneficial to the people that we work with. So think about that. Think about your life and where that applies to you. All the places where standards of accountability and quality matter for you and for what you're trying to accomplish, life you're trying to live, and how you can ensure standards are upheld based off of quality standards.